Thank you very much, Karen. So I have the honor of launching this 4-day food security COVID-19 learning event with its important and timely theme of navigating new possibilities in a rapidly changing world. I also have the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker today, Sarah Charles, the Acting Assistant to the Administrator of USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, or BHA. To the first task at hand, I would like to stress the importance that BHA places on our implementer-community relationship, knowing that our partners are at the center of what we do. We fully recognize the importance of this partnership long before BHA, reflected by the TOPS mechanism that many of you are familiar with, and now with the current dynamic support and partnership that is ideal. This community's extraordinary collective wealth of knowledge, capacity to innovate, adapt, and scale have been and will continue to be essential to USAID's ability to deliver on our commitments to support a timely, effective, safe, and wide-reaching global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've already asked a lot from our partners, including asking many of you to pivot your programs to account for the pandemic, while continuing to serve the most vulnerable across an extraordinarily challenging global landscape. And we've looked to you for new approaches and innovations amidst these very uncertain times. Through its COVID-19 learning series, which started not long after the pandemic gripped us all in early 2020, IDEAL created virtual spaces for implementers to come together and discuss the challenges they were facing and learn from one another to adapt in real time. As I understand it, the conversations and learning that emerged from these virtual exchanges were really unprecedented in scope and scale, and no doubt significantly contributed to the kinds of rapid, informed adapting that occurred across the community over this extraordinary period. And here we are. Over these next 4 days, we have a rare opportunity to reflect back on and wrestle with our experiences from the last year, and to bring forward insights, lessons, and recommendations to serve us in the coming months and beyond. With that, I'd like to express my gratitude to IDEAL under your able guidance, Karen, and to USAID's organizing team for your thought leadership and organizational skills in bringing us this important learning event. I'd like to introduce Sarah Charles, today's keynote speaker. With her depth of humanitarian experience and commitment to the world's most vulnerable, we were very pleased to learn that Sarah would assume BHA's top leadership role recently. From her very start, a number of months ago, she embraced the role with energy, intellect, and compassion, hitting the ground running with one of the most challenging portfolios in the US government. Sarah comes to BHA from the implementing partner community, where she recently served as Senior Director for Policy and Advocacy for the International Rescue Committee. Sarah has also served at the US National Security Council at the White House, first as Director for Humanitarian Affairs, then as Acting Senior Director for Strategic Planning, in both roles addressing a broad range of policy issues and coordinating worldwide humanitarian response. So on to Sarah. I wish you the very best over the next days, and I'm looking forward to learning from the outcomes of your exchanges. Thank you very much, and enjoy.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Thank you to IDEAL for inviting me to speak at this important and timely COVID-19 food security and learning event. While I unfortunately couldn't join you in person today, I'd like to recognize the enormity of the challenges we've faced due to COVID-19. More importantly, I want to acknowledge all that we've accomplished together and highlight some of the lessons we can carry forward. Since late 2019, COVID-19 has killed millions of people around the world, infected tens of millions more, and disrupted markets, livelihoods, and the very way that we go about our day-to-day lives. As we've seen, the pandemic continues to affect people far beyond the immediate crisis. COVID-19 has hindered basic health services, increased severe food insecurity, and disproportionately affected already vulnerable groups, including women, girls, and the disabled. COVID's indirect impacts on food insecurity have been especially dire. In 2020, as this group knows well, approximately 155 million people in 55 countries were acutely food insecure and in need of urgent assistance, an increase of 20 million people from 2019. Unfortunately, as we continue to fight the pandemic, food insecurity is expected to worsen in 2021 and 2022. But the impacts of COVID are far-reaching and global and include impacts to us right here at home. COVID-19 has impacted our lives and how we work, down to the very way we do day-to-day tasks. You all have had to adapt to working remotely rather than on the ground and in the communities that you serve. We've all had to innovate and think creatively to optimize programming for a new environment. The good news is, together we've overcome many of these challenges and have seen how our work makes a difference in countries and communities around the world. USAID has provided more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to help communities affected by the virus. And in partnership with all of you, this includes providing emergency food assistance to more than 4.7 million vulnerable people. But how did we do it? Amid a global pandemic, amid the ongoing turmoil of day-to-day life at home. Since the beginning of this pandemic, we have worked together to adapt and contextualize existing food assistance programs to fit local needs and improve COVID-19 readiness efforts around the world. We are extremely grateful for the flexibility and perseverance of our implementing partner community, all of you who continue to play a critical role in our COVID-19 response. Through the use of adaptive management practices, you were able to pivot programs and ways of working, learning, and increased efficiency. You managed to adapt to create COVID-sensitive programs and to maintain a do-no-harm footing. You also had to balance the difficult task of addressing urgent needs on the ground while ensuring the safety of staff and the communities that we serve, and you did it successfully. You implemented program pivots such as social distancing at food distribution sites, implementation of hand washing stations, and posting of COVID safety reminders and tips, among other tactics. These program adaptations allowed us to continue to achieve important food security and humanitarian objectives, while also ensuring the safety and security of staff and community members. You leveraged virtual technology to connect implementers and local actors to learning and collaboration opportunities, while also shifting more responsibility and decision-making to country and activity-based staff and local partners, as international staff often could not travel and local staff movement to communities was restricted. You worked with and empowered local governments, the private sector, and community actors to help achieve your goals, thus seizing an opportunity to accelerate localization efforts. Together, we have come a long way. We've helped provide food assistance when COVID has driven families to lack basic food needs. We've helped keep communities safe when faced with a deadly pandemic. We've helped fight the ongoing impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. But although we seem to be reaching a turning point with the pandemic here at home, this is not the case in many of the countries where we work. We recently saw this in India and throughout South Asia, where they experienced a deadly surge in COVID-19 and required urgent assistance from the US government, including support from USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. The US government remains committed to beating this pandemic. And I want to highlight the president's initial pledge to donate 80 million vaccine doses to help countries battling the pandemic, as well as a recent announcement of an additional 500 million doses that the president announced at the G7 on June 10th. But the emergence of more dangerous virus variants makes this a race against the clock, and vaccine access, supply, and manufacturing challenges pose serious threats. At the same time, the pandemic's impacts continue to drive increased humanitarian needs, including for food assistance. Preventing famine and mitigating severe food insecurity is a top priority for our Bureau. Other priorities include support and strengthening public health responses, providing protection, strengthening humanitarian operations and coordination, and improving and strengthening humanitarian architecture to support the scale-up of infectious disease response capacity well into the future. We will, of course, continue to work with all of you to adapt and contextualize existing programs in order to respond to COVID and its impacts. We are extremely grateful for all of you, our partner community, for your perseverance, your hard work, your patience, and your collaboration through this ongoing and extremely challenging period. You all have demonstrated your commitment and willingness to work together with each other, with local governments and communities, with the wider community, to surmount challenges that may often seem impossible. We would not have seen such significant progress thus far without your leadership and your partnership, and we look forward to continuing on this journey. I also want to acknowledge the importance of knowledge sharing and peer learning across organizational boundaries. I realize that you all have been sharing learnings both formally and informally, and it is through events like this one that we learn, grow, and adapt, carrying the learnings forward in our everyday work. So thank you again to Ideal for organizing and hosting this event, and the entire partner community for your invaluable expertise and inputs. As I've said, we still have a long road ahead of us, but we've come so far. We've seen positive change in vulnerable communities around the world, and we're well prepared to continue fighting this pandemic and its impacts. One day, COVID-19 will be one less thing exacerbating our existing humanitarian challenges. But in the meantime, thank you for your continued collaboration. Don't stop innovating, continue to share learning, continue to do what all of you do best as humanitarians, saving lives and relieving suffering throughout the world. With that, I will now leave you to kick off this tremendous event. Enjoy, and thank you again.